Welcome to Season 2 of Limited Supply, the place for refreshingly real takes on what D2C is really like.
We're your hosts, Nik and Moiz. Let's get into it and start making money.
All right, Moiz, we're back for episode 6 of Limited Supply.
Does that mean that half of the season is already over? Is this the halfway point?
The end of this episode is the halfway point. And we've transitioned from a studio in New York to a TikTok skateboard behind your head.
I love the studio in New York, and to be honest, I think these are better to do when we're in person.
Agreed.
But that's obviously not always possible. But I rented this house in LA, and it's fantastic. Every day I wake up, and I've only used the office and the bedroom. Like I haven't used. There's a pool and a beautiful living area, but I'm excited to use it over the weekend, I suppose.
Yeah, I got to fly out, and we can record 3 in a row. Maybe our last 3 or something.
Do that right after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, perfect. All right, Moiz. So you texted me. You had a bunch of stuff, so I didn't prep much. But what do you got for us?
Okay, great. I want to do. So first, I was at this dinner last night with hosted by Nik and Chase. It was here in LA, and there were a bunch of e-commerce guys, and it was so fun chatting with them. And everyone is like, I only listened to 2 podcasts, All In and Limited Supply. And
Let's
I'm like,
go.
Me too. So it's awesome. So anyway, this is what I wanted to chat about tonight. One is P&L breakdown by percentage, open rate when it comes to emails, people not understanding their business is in trouble, great website features, a feature I think that exists on Klaviyo that everyone should be using, him stock and Allbirds stock.
Awesome.
So a bunch of things.
There's also, did you see the Honest Company returns came out today?
No, what happened with Honest Company?
Let's see. I took some notes here. Basically, quarterly revenue came in at $84.5 million. It beat the top estimates by $1 million. But personal care products, which I think is a big part of their catalog, is down. Household and wellness is up 115%, which is an interesting signal. And e-commerce growth slowed down significantly, around 14% compared to the same period last year. This is actually all from a tweet from this company called Celebrity Packaged Goods. But marketing expenses up 26%. Operating losses more than doubled, 11 million instead of 4 million in Q3. And basically, they paid 26% more for 2% increase in revenue.
When it comes to operating expenses, is that what you mean? Wow. Okay, I'm going to dig into that. I didn't realize that they announced earnings. Where should we start with? Should we start? Okay, since we're talking about publicly traded companies,
let's
just talk about Allbirds first. Let's go into Allbirds first. So Hims had a great. I guess I started with Hims. Hims had a great quarter. They announced results. The CEO posted their results on LinkedIn, and as soon as I saw him say, Q3 earnings are out for Hims, I was like, I bet it was a good quarter. I have this idea. I have this one feeling that if any CEO, the day that they're going to announce earnings is I'm going to go on CNBC and talk about my earnings. So that CNBC will be like, Twitter is announcing earnings tonight and Jack Dorsey is going to join us right after they announce earnings. I feel like earnings are always going to be really good because no CEO wants to go on CNBC and then have the host be like, yeah, how did you fuck up so bad?
Yeah, exactly. It's always good news if the founder's tweeting about it, posting about it, or doing some kind of press.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, okay, must be great news. And it was great news. I think their stock popped 20% earlier this week in a single day. And, unlike a lot of the other direct-to-consumer businesses that have gone public, Hims has really held up better than most other businesses. I think it IPO'd at a $2 billion valuation. And today it's a $1.3 billion valuation, which is not that's still a significant decrease, don't get me wrong, but it's not nearly as bad as all the other businesses that have been in e-commerce and have gone public in the past 24 months.
Yeah.
And I think something like Hims is we've doubled our revenue and 90% of it is subscription. So it is a really strong a fundamentally more interesting business. I didn't dig enough into it because it just came out, I think, a couple days ago and I just didn't have the time. But I think Hims is, not the exception that proves the rule, but actually the only exception that there is when it comes to or one of the few exceptions when it comes to e-commerce businesses that have gone public and still does really well.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to talk about Allbirds because I started digging into this late last night and early this morning, and I just went down this rabbit hole because Allbirds' stock has really gotten killed. When they IPO'd, it was about $15 a share, and when they started really trading, their first trades were about $21.50 a share.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, right when you could buy a share, it was at $21.50. So I started digging in to see who their shareholders were. And I looked at a couple of them. First, I didn't know this, but Allbirds used to be called Boz Inc., B-O-Z Inc., and I'm not sure why
Never
it was called that. Me neither, but it said it on a publicly traded document, and I was like, I don't know what this means. But let me give you a few of the numbers. So Tiger Global invested $17.5 million in 2017 into Allbirds. So they put in $18 million. I'm not sure if they made other investments following on. That type of information isn't always clear. But at IPO, Tiger Global owned 11% of the business, owned 11% of Allbirds, and they sold $0 worth of it. The business went public, and often what happens is when companies go public, shareholders can sell shares that they own to try and get some liquidity and some cash out. And Tiger Global said, no, we're not going to sell a single share when you go public at $15 a share.
Mm-hmm.
Today, the only times you need to announce when who your shareholders are like big shareholders at IPO, or if someone owns at least 5% today. If you own 5% of Allbirds today, you have to make it public, and Allbirds needs to announce that you own 5%. So at IPO, Tiger Global owned 11%. They didn't sell anything, and today they own certainly under 5% and possibly zero shares of Allbirds. So they basically exited most of their position, if not all of their position. Between the time Allbirds went public and today. And I thought that was just really interesting.
Yeah, I think that is really interesting. Do you know, is it normal for a company like them to just sell all their shares at the IPO? Isn't that the investor's dream? It's like you either exit or you IPO, right? And hopefully you exit with an IPO. But do they... Usually you're in some sort of lockup period where you have to hold on to your shares for a certain period of time. You don't have to hold on to them forever, but a lot of times they'll say you have to hold them up. You have to hold on to them for 6 months or a year or even longer. I know a very large privately traded company that has a lockup agreement that you have to sign for, I think 5 years. Basically, if you're an investor in the business today and they go public tomorrow, you can't sell until November 2026. Or November 2027. I'm sorry, it's 2022 now, right? Yeah. So that's a pretty crazy lockup period. So it really varies, but a lot of times you will not sell right at IPO because it's a bad signaling effect. Totally.
Oh, all of your existing investors want cash now and they don't want to be in this business now. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So Tiger Global sold $0 when the business IPO'd. Today, they owned 11% of the business. Today, they own under 5% of the business.
That's wild.
Let me go through a couple others. A couple are not that interesting. Okay, so we talked about Tiger Global. They invested at least $18 million. They owned 11%. Didn't sell any at IPO, but have exited most of their position. Allbirds has been public for almost exactly 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was looking into it. It's basically the 1 year anniversary. Lear Hippo Venture. Do you know Lear Hippo? They're based in New York City. Yeah. They owned 7 million shares at IPO. They owned 5% of the company. They sold 1.7 million shares at the IPO. Today, I'm not sure how many shares they own because it's definitely under 5%.
Wow.
But here's where things get a little bit more interesting. These are the big shareholders. Fidelity owned 7.3 million shares of the company at IPO, or 6% of the business. Okay, 6%. And they sold zero. Fidelity had invested in the business, and they're like, we're not going to sell any at IPO. And when the business went public, Fidelity, it's worth $155 million. Mm-hmm. The 7.3 million shares that they owned were worth $155 million. Today, those shares are worth $18.5 million.
Wow.
So they've lost $140 million basically in stock value. And they actually own more shares today than they did at IPO. They owned 7.3 at IPO, and today they own 8.2 million. So they own 9% of the business today. They used to own about 6% of the business.
Wow.
But the shares that they had at IPO, which were worth $155 million, are today worth $8.2 million.
That's got to be painful. I mean, just
it's
brutal.
Crazy. The other interesting thing was there was one other company, and I'm not sure who this is. It's called Peterson Venture Partners. I don't know them well. I'm not familiar with them. They owned 1.5% of Allbirds at the IPO. And at IPO, they sold every single share they had. They said, we don't want one share of this any longer.
Yeah.
So they exited their entire position, at possibly a very high watermark for
good for them. At least they made out well. I'm sure they're looking back on it thinking, thank God we did that.
Yeah. It is bananas to me, like how much, I'm not sure. One of the things I don't understand is, let's say you're a VC fund that invested in a company like Allbirds. Let's say you're Moiz Ali Venture Capital and you invested in Allbirds. I charge 2 and 20%. Are you familiar with the 2 and 20 rates?
Yeah, but explain it because a lot of people probably aren't.
Yeah, so sure. Basically, if you give me, I go and invest money, right? Like I take other people's money, and those other people are called LPs, and I take their money and I invest it on their behalf, and I charge them, 2% a year of how much ever they invest as a management fee for me to pay my expenses, my office, my salary, all that kind of stuff. And then I charge a 20% carry, which is basically 20% of any money that I earn you. So let's say you invested $1,000 and I return you $2,000. Well, guess what? I've earned you an extra $1,000. So I charge $200.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my 20% is. It's 20% on the profit I make you. Not that I returned to you $2,000. It's not like I don't get $400. I didn't make you $2,000. I only made you $1,000 because you put in $1,000.
Right. It's 20% of the net profit.
Yeah. So I always wonder how that 20% works on a company like Allbirds. Like, okay, so if you're Lear or Hippo, or if you're Fidelity, right, and you're doing the same thing, or if you're Moiz Ali Investments, Moiz Ali VC Fund, and I made you a bunch of money, and it was worth $100 million at IPO. Do I get 20% of whatever it IPO'd at? Like, do I get? Let's say I earned you $100 million. Do I get 20% of that? Like $20 million? Well, what happens if you don't get the stock and it just continues to fall and I hold it? I think then I don't get to charge the 20%.
Yeah, I think it's 20% of the final delivered profits. So if that 11 million became or 10 million became 100, but then it became 30, you would only get the 20% of the 20 million profit.
Yeah. And I think I've got to distribute the shares to you. I basically got to go and distribute those shares to you.
Right.
And then say, okay, now it's over because now the shares are in your hand and I've delivered them to you.
Right. Exactly.
I think you're right about that too.
Yeah. It is crazy though. Some firms will charge 15 to like 30% of carry, which is
Andreessen Horowitz charges 3 and 30.
Wow.
Which is bananas. But yeah, I always thought that was really interesting. And I also don't understand what like a VC fund would do holding publicly traded shares. Mm-hmm. Like if you're Lear or Hippo and your mandate is to go out and invest in up and coming businesses, if this is a publicly traded stock, you should give it to your investors because basically now they can decide what to do with it. Do they want the cash or do they want to continue to be invested in Allbirds or do they want to like do they have a mortgage payment? Do they have to send their kids to college? Like, once a business goes public and there's the ability to have that liquidity, I think VC funds should return those shares to their LPs and say, look, you can decide whether you want to sell it or don't want to sell it, but it's not our mandate to continue to hold publicly traded shares. We're not in the business of investing in publicly traded stocks. You're in the business of investing in publicly traded stocks. These are your shares now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, I thought that was really interesting to see like what happens. Like if you sell it all, it's a windfall. If you hold on to it, it falls to 90% in value. It just blows my mind that the Fidelities of the world might still be holding on to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's talk about, let's switch gears and talk about 2 things that I learned about recently. And one was at this dinner that I went to last night.
Awesome.
When people are sending out emails today via Klaviyo or MailChimp or whatever, like I feel like iOS has destroyed understanding your open rate. Like everyone's open rates are now 40% or 50%, and that doesn't make any sense. Is that have you seen that?
Yeah.
And that what happened there? Was it a result of iOS or was it something else?
Yeah, it's I believe the way it works is like when iOS gets an email, it just marks it as opened. Like if people use Apple Mail, it marks all their emails coming in as opened. But I have noticed with Superhuman, because I use Superhuman day to day, it's fairly accurate in its reporting of opening. But that could also be like people just don't use Apple Mail much with work stuff.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Okay. That's interesting. Well, I don't know why I didn't think about this. It's pretty obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me, I guess. So I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. There was this guy I chatted with at the dinner last night, and he's like, "What we do is we segment our people who open up our emails on Android versus iOS to get a barometer of open rates to an email. So we'll send out an email to only people who have Android phones or have opened up on Android devices in the past, as opposed to Apple devices. And that'll give us a good barometer of like, what was the subject line that actually won? And like, what was the open rate of this email? So everything doesn't just look like it's 50%. And then they say, okay, whatever the winner is, let's send out that message as well to Apple users. And we'll probably consider that as the barometer for the open rate for Apple users as well. But we don't want to set we'll run an A/B test in Android and then send it out to Apple users.
Yeah, that's really smart. I have seen something similar to that, but on the reporting workflow. And I don't know the exact setup, but it was basically looking at open rate, for Android devices versus all devices collectively, Android and maybe desktop.
Okay, someone did that for you, like something called open rate did?
No, I saw it on Twitter as like an idea that somebody shared. But yeah, it is kind of crazy. I've definitely noticed open rates have jumped. And yeah, for people who love A/B testing subject lines, like I used to be nicknamed the subject line king because I would love, the brand marketing team would have their subject lines for all these newsletter campaigns, and I'd be like, guys, no one wants to open, a fruity oasis. No one fucking cares about a fruity oasis. We're gonna say this is the thing you never knew hint water could do, or something crazy like that. And but yeah, for that type of stuff, it kind of hurts. But the Android to then taking the winner and putting it for iOS is really smart.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Let me ask you, were there any learnings from those A/B testings you ran? So, for instance, if I'm running a Black Friday sale, should I say, native deodorants our Black Friday sale is on, or should I say save 30% during our Black Friday sale? I would imagine. Yeah,
actually, it's really interesting you bring this up specifically on native because I just saw the holiday scents had launched. As I was just looking at the names of the holiday scent, I could already predict which one is going to be the best seller, which one's going to be the worst seller, just by the names.
Really?
Not even going into the scents.
Okay, what are the holiday? I'm not even sure what the holiday scents are. So tell everyone what they are, and then tell me. Yeah.
So here, I'll pull it up real quick.
Oh, mistletoe.
So it was like all
lump of coal.
Exactly. There's like smell nice and smell naughty, and so there's like sugar cookie. There's candy cane, like that's going to be a bestseller. Yule log, no, that's going to be the bottom. That is not getting to the top.
Really? Right. A lump of coal doesn't sound like it's fantastic.
Fresh mistletoe, sure. Lump of coal, no chance. Spiced eggnog, maybe. But yeah, it was funny. I opened this and I immediately thought, like, you could tell Moiz is not here looking at this because this probably would never get approved. You would just look at it and be like, who the fuck is going to buy a lump of coal? Who's going to proudly buy a lump of coal deodorant, or anything lump of coal? It could be a lump of coal briefcase with $100 in it. You wouldn't buy it. Anyways.
No comment. No comment on what you just said.
So yeah, subject lines, I think, I think of so I think of any funnel, like even the landing page stuff we were talking about, it's always about like earning the next click. And Sam used to have this rule at The Hustle, which was essentially, your goal is to always get the reader to get to the next sentence. And then your sentence will work hard enough. But your job is to always just get them to the end of the first sentence and start it on the next. And so I always took that approach too of like, all right, well, if we show up, first of all, we show up in, on an iPhone mail, you have to pop. Like iPhone mail is straight, pretty white or dark mode, but it's plain. There's not like imagery or anything. If you have the Google app, the Gmail app, it's a little more color popping. But so I would always try to do things with like emojis because emojis was an easy way to add color and get attention.
In the subject line.
In the subject line. And then ideally, you have to think about two things. One is the length of the subject line on a push notification. So people who have push notifications enabled, which is a good amount of people, you want to be able to fit something actionable or something that gets them to click open or basically click it within that preview limit of the text. And same thing with the preview text. So the preview text is after the subject line. It's not always written in the email, but you can make it whatever. And so, for example, if Native was selling 30% off for Black Friday, instead of saying like our Black Friday sale is now live, like every other brand is already doing that. you could be a little more riskier and say, only, the countdown, or only 11 hours left to save 40%. It's like, oh shit, there's urgency, there's an incentive, and that next to something else is probably going to get the click. But yeah, ideally you have a verb in the subject line. If you're just if it's like flowers and rainbows, you're not getting clicked. And, then you're just mad about why people aren't opening your emails. But yeah,
Harness are 30% off.
Yeah, exactly. There's, I think, and the other thing too is you used to do this with the post-purchase email. We've talked about this before, but somebody's putting your deodorant on a pillow. You've just got to be different in the sense of, everybody is already sending the same fucking transactional email. Thank you for your order. The next email. Here's some more things we're selling. The next email. Here's our story. No one gives a fuck about your story, bro. They're there to get their product, and they're there to learn something cool. You have to give them something in exchange to, if somebody opened your email, you should almost be so grateful that you should only give them content that is going to make them go, wow, I can't wait to open the next email I get from these guys.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a great point. We always tried to make an email where you lost your password and you were resetting it really interesting. We know the feeling of losing your remote between your between the cushions on your sofa.
Right.
So we know exactly what you're going through. We're going to make this as easy as possible. Here's the link to click. We could never make it. I had never had the time or the inclination, I guess, the ability to write the great copy that I wanted for that.
Yeah.
So we struggled to get that right, but I think you're absolutely right. That's a great idea. The only tricks I found are, one, if you're offering a discount, you want to put it in the subject line with a number. Don't say we've started a sale. Say save 30%. That's going to get people more excited. And then there's always a weird test that you got to run where it's should I get people to save 30%, or is my average order always for native $12, and I should say you get a 30% off, you get $1.20 off of that or something like that. You know what I mean? Or about $3.60 off of that rather. I always wonder what you should do, whether you should do a percentage off or a flat dollar off. But I think it varies depending on the product you got and what you're trying to do with your AOV. Yeah,
and also what the numbers are, right? So if it's save 5%, that's not as appealing as save $5.
Yeah, definitely.
And then,
good point.
And the third option too is we actually did this for hooks, where we said, so you could buy 5 landing pages for $20K instead of 25. You essentially save $5,000, or you save one page.
Yeah.
So I was thinking okay, do we message it as you save $5,000 or you get one page free? And it turned out that get a free page on us was the winning copy.
Really?
There. Yeah.
That's surprising because $5,000 is such a big number. I think I would have guessed that.
You would think, but then you think about the growth marketers that just see millions of dollars show up on a Shopify dashboard and then more millions of dollars being spent on Facebook. You almost get numb to money if you're in performance marketing or growth marketing. Dollars in front of you written down mean nothing. Oh, $1 million. All right, whatever. Oh, $50,000 test. That's nothing. Why is it so low?
Yeah.
It's it's kind of weird, but yeah, so that one, but yeah, I think also people just don't take enough risks with their subject lines because they feel like it's off brand, when in reality, I think it's the only thing that kind of makes you stand out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you got to be really aggressive when it comes to subject lines. There was you mentioned save $5 or save 5%. That's such a good example of that. There's this company called Naked Wines. I think we talked about them a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
They're the guys who put in insert card. They put in and it's so smart. They put in a gift card. Their business model is, instead of running Facebook ads, we just put in inserts in a bunch of people's boxes. They contacted us at Native and they're look, let us put in an insert in every one of your boxes and we'll pay you I don't know, is it $50 CPM or something to that effect?
Right.
And they're their gift card is, it's a $100 gift card. So you're holy shit, $100 is a lot of money. I'm going to go use it. And then you're oh, I see. When I use this $100 gift card, the minimum purchase is $200.
Yeah.
There's nothing on your site for under $200. That's where you get me.
Right.
It's really clever. I think, what's his name? Equinox had that as well for a long time. They're save $350 at some watch store. I forget, when you sign up for an Equinox membership, and I was this is awesome. I'm going to go buy a Fossil watch.
Yeah.
And I was okay, you only have Rolexes. So this $350 is worth nothing.
Right. It's 2%.
Yeah. The other thing that I found is always just like if you can include the first name in an open line, you should, because you're going to get a lot more.
Yeah,
open
first
rates.
name or the word you or your. Those always do really well.
Okay. So what's the best subject line for like save 30% during our Black Friday deal? You can save 30% during our Black Friday deal? Fuck you. Get 30% off our Black Friday sale.
I think we used to use, the emoji of like the red siren, the red light. Like we'd put that on the outsides. And then in the middle, like time's running out or like, only 11
I think you've done
left.
that so often. I think the hard part, there's a couple of hard parts of that. One is everyone has been using the sirens.
Yeah.
And it's hard to announce a Black Friday sale, 3 weeks before Black Friday and then say only 11 hours left for a Black Friday sale, please buy as early as humanly possible.
Yeah.
The other thing I found that actually works is like a countdown. Like, you say only 11 hours left. We A/B tested this in Native where we put a countdown timer at the top of an email. And we're like, so it actually count down and say 11 hours. It only worked on like the last day or the last couple days or like 2 days left, 1 day left, last chance. And we put a countdown timer at the top. And that actually did well when it came to performance where people were like, okay, they did feel a sense of urgency. The other thing I would do is when we launch new cents, I don't know if Native still does this, I'd write only 500 of these cents available. Every email would only say only 500 available, even though there were, 50,000 available.
Yeah.
I'd write only 500 available at the beginning to try and drive up some demand.
Yeah. Another good copy trick there is, mentioning when the order will ship. So like your order ships today or like, your deodorant will ship today. Another one that I had thought of was, just a trick that we used to do all the time was when you create an email, for example, for your promo, let's say your Black Friday promo or like whatever promo, New Year, New You, make almost 4 versions. So like emails are made with basically blocks of images, right? And so the image that is essentially like your hero banner of the email, just make that 3 different ways where you have where you just add badges to it. So like, early bird is like the first email that goes out. Then the middle one, you change the badge to be like, bestseller or like, rated, blah, blah, blah. And then the last one, it's like, only 12 hours left. And you just basically get 3 emails out of 1 pretty quickly just by adding a badge.
Sure. Yeah. Sale starts now, sale extended, sale ends tomorrow, last chance, final hours.
Right.
5 badges that you can reuse on every single email.
Exactly.
1 creative now.
And then you just for the last one, you can just add that timer template near the top.
Yeah. Exactly. Couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah.
Had been doing that for a decade. So agree with you. Okay. Let's switch gears to one other thing that I saw on, and this is if you're doing SMS. Like, I was trying to brainstorm ways to get more SMS, phone numbers.
Yeah. And
a lot of people are doing this. I never loved asking for phone numbers in the checkout flow because a bunch of people like get scared and like with like every field you have just increases your abandonment rate. Like the more fields, the more abandonment you're going to have. And so at Native, I got rid of the phone number pretty early on. And, that as a result, it was really hard to collect SMS numbers. And, we probably should have been doing it and we didn't. And then like all of a sudden you put in that, but let's say you're not collecting it at checkout where you don't have that box and a check mark. I didn't know this, but Klaviyo has this great thing where this isn't available, I think, with PostScript. Maybe it is. I'm not sure if it's available with PostScript, but Klaviyo has this thing where if you're using Klaviyo SMS, you can create like a pop-up to capture SMS on the thank you page. So imagine someone goes through your entire checkout flow, makes a purchase, has even seen the post-purchase upsell, gets to the thank you page, and 3 or 5 seconds later or whatever, the pop-up comes up that says, sign up for our best offers right now with your phone number. And this is the thank you page. So you've gotten all their, you've gotten their money, you've got they've already purchased. There's nothing to lose here. So it's just a pop. And like, you can't exactly get them to purchase anything else right now because they've just placed a purchase. You've already charged their card. And now you're sort of like, hey, let me collect your phone number on the thank you page of a site. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that is really smart. I guess the collection rate of SMS is pretty significantly lower than the collection rate of emails. I want to say emails you can average probably like 7 to 8%. I think SMS is usually around like 3%.
On a pop-up?
Yeah, on a pop-up.
Yeah. When you're advising companies, are you usually using those dual email? Then like once you put in your email address,
then it changes to text. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and
I
there's
hate
been a
people
few
like that,
variations.
but I
Like,
do that.
yeah. One is, for desktop, you basically collect email and then somebody types in their number and then they get a text to verify. The easier way is on mobile. You type in the email and then you press a button and then you can send a text and then you don't have to double opt in because it's like you kind of opt in the first place. But
because you proactively sent a text.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's genius. I mean, right at the end, I mean, I'd imagine your conversion of people who, like, if you were to look at the numbers and zoom out over, 1,000 purchases, like the conversion rate of SMS is probably much higher on people who buy versus people who just come to the site. Like, even if you look at the macro traffic versus the ones who sign up, it's probably much higher. And also, you're not adding friction to the checkout process.
Yeah. And you don't have to. That's exactly right. And so someone showed me their stats. They showed me this, and they showed me how they did it. So it's only on their thank you page. They exclude people whose phone numbers they already have. So if you're like a Klaviyo, if you're already on their Klaviyo profile and you have their phone number, they'll exclude this person. They'll be like, "Oh, Nik just placed a purchase with Native. We already have Nik's phone number. Don't show him the pop-up."
Right.
And for mobile, they had like a 20% opt-in rate, basically.
Wow.
Of people who saw it. And I think they delayed it for like 5 seconds or 4 seconds or something. So you see the thank you page. If you wait 4 seconds, you see the pop-up that says, "Hey, submit your phone number and get good deals." And then, you do exactly what you talked about. You hit a button, send a text message, and they have a 20% opt-in rate.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great idea.
I thought it was a great idea. And more people should be doing it. The thank you page is the best real estate in e-commerce,
it's
or the
so
most
good.
underutilized real estate in e-commerce. Like, you've already gotten their information. They've placed a purchase. They like you. The brand resonates with them. You've proven that you can solve a need that they have. And then all you need to do is utilize this information and utilize that real estate in the best way possible.
And you have the payment token.
These are people who love you. Yeah. And you have the payment token. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, before you do this, you should do a post-purchase upsell. If you don't have a post-purchase upsell, create a post-purchase upsell. If you've already got a post-purchase upsell, the next thing you can do is show a pop-up saying, "Hey, give us your SMS information."
Totally. How would you, if a company came to you and said, "We're trying to figure out how to get more traffic to our site," what would you tell them? Like, outside of ads.
Outside of ads.
Yeah. The only things I could come up with, one was like, do something.
More emails.
Yeah. More emails. One was like, do something earned media related, like go do something, launch something, just get a bunch of people to, seed product to a bunch of people, get them talking about it. The other one was, go ahead.
Let me follow up on the first thing where it was more emails. At Native, we started sending out 2 or 3 emails a week to consistently drive traffic from our existing customers. And almost didn't even matter what we sent out. We'd be like, I'd send out an email being like, "Let me introduce you to," on our original formula, we use beeswax.
Yeah.
And I sent out an email being like, "Let me tell you how we selected the beeswax that we use in Native deodorant. We work with this apiarist who majored in vegetables and minored in insects at Cornell. And he graduated Cornell, during World War II or something like that. He was, in his 80s I forgot how old he was now. And we're like, this is the apiarist we use to make these things. And it was great. It was
That's
super
hilarious.
effective. And that was a great email. And we just send out that email. People will read it and be like, "Let me go purchase." So you almost have to find reasons to email people.
100%.
And then you're right, we created novelty scents to get people to talk about us. We're like, look, if we drop more novelty scents, will influencers talk? The reason we came out with seasonal scents is we're going to have to hire a bunch of YouTube influencers and Instagram influencers.
Mm-hmm.
What's an Instagram influencer going to talk about every 3 months when it comes to Native deodorant? Great. I still use this and I still smell like coconut. I was like, that's not interesting. We're going to create scents specifically to get people to talk about us again. And we launched this rosé scent. And we were on the Today Show and Good Morning America and a bunch of other publications. And that drove a bunch of traffic too.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Product launches, I feel like, are such an underrated way to just get more things to talk about, even if it's like scents or variants of an existing SKU. That's why I think it's so, if you can get a low MOQ deal set up with whoever your manufacturer is, you could launch a product a month if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sorry, I interrupted you. The real question was, what are ways to get traffic to your site outside of ads? We talked about emails. We talked about
product seeding to big influencers, but then, to get meaningful traffic, you got to pay. The other one was affiliate. So like ramping up affiliate in a world, but not necessarily coupon sites. And also not, if you don't have enough time to go build out like your entire publisher network on Rakuten or something, using something. Have you ever heard of reward style or like to know it?
Yeah.
Like using a network like that to drive traffic.
Yeah, all great ideas.
I couldn't think of many more.
Yeah, it is really, really difficult.
Product hunt?
I think those are all great ideas. Yeah, product hunt isn't a bad answer to that either.
Yeah.
But okay, let's switch gears to more things because we're going to run out of time. It's already we're already pretty far into it. One is, have we talked about this? I'm not sure if I talked to you about this. Like, did we talk about Grow LTV? Did you you and I chat about that? Like, there's this company called alphapaw.com.
Oh, yes. We did chat about this. This is the dev agency that does the special cart.
Yeah, the dev agency that created that cart, right? That is such a good cart. That's such a good CRO.
Amazing cart.
I go to alphapaw.com and I constantly like add products and I'm like, fuck, this is the best add to cart pop-up I've ever seen. Like, here's your cart. It's animated. New products pop up. They're relevant. There's a bunch of them. It's very easy to add them. It's very easy to get to checkout. I really like that AlphaPaw Grow LTV cart.
Yeah.
I'm surprised more people aren't using it.
Same. It's on IMI and Kettle and Fire as well, and Shirley Wines. And yeah, every time I go to their sites and I look at that, I'm just like, wow, this is such a beautifully designed, like perfect UX and perfect UI too. And also just great on the conversion side.
Okay, let's switch gears one last time. There's one thing I want to talk about, but we'll talk about it on episode 7, if that's okay with you, Nick. It's people not understanding their business is in trouble. I've chatted with several founders over the past 3 weeks, and I'm like, do you realize there's this law of gravity, and you're going to run out of money, and you need to make changes today to your business if you want to survive for 3 months. And they're like, no, it'll be okay. A video I want to chat about that I think is not well understood or not understood well enough in our community. But before that, I want to break down someone's P&L. So someone gave me access to their P&L, and they said I could share it on a percentage basis across, with the podcast community we've got going here. And I'd love to do that because I think it's really interesting. And I never looked at native numbers this way, but I really wish I had. Basically, the brand did a bunch of money in revenue, and this is how their revenue broke down. 66% of their revenue came from a Stripe. 32% of their revenue came from PayPal, and 1% of their revenue came from Authorize.net. And I think it's because they have like a CBD product or something, and so that's why they have to use Authorize.net for the CBD stuff. Their fees, their total credit card fees across all, across all their revenue was So all of it. So let's say revenue was $100,000. I'm going to use revenue as 100%. Revenue is 100% of revenue. The total credit card fees they had to pay as a function of revenue was 2.9%. So basically, if their revenue was $100,000, they had to pay 2.9% of that to Stripe, PayPal, and Authorize.net in order to pay off all their fees.
Okay.
Refunds were 1% of their business. So, they break it down. They're like refunds via Stripe were 0.9%, refunds via PayPal were 1.22%, and refunds via Authorize.net were 1.4%. Okay. I'm not sure why they were higher for the CBD product.
Yeah.
Makes sense so far. Is this good? I feel like whenever I see this kind of information, I'm like, this is super helpful for me to understand a business.
Absolutely.
Okay, credit card disputes were 0.2%, 0.27 on Stripe, 0.8 on Authorize.net.
Got it.
So more disputes on Authorize.net. Again, the CBD product, it maybe has an issue or something than everything else.
Wow.
Okay, they break down COGS. I'm sorry. Yeah, is that weird? Sorry, any questions thus far?
No. Keep going.
Okay. They break down COGS and they say, okay, COGS is a total percentage of, COGS includes all shipping expenses, storage expenses, the cost of products sold, cost of the boxes, any other freight that they have. All of that is put into COGS, and COGS is 43% of revenue. So this is a huge thing. Like the cost of the goods is. And they even break it down and they're like, the cost of the shipping is 20% and the cost of the goods sold is 18%. And so that's 38%, and everything else, freight and everything else is about 3%.
Wow. Did they put advertising or customer acquisition in there?
That's next,
Let's
baby.
go.
That's the big one. That's the big one. Okay. Ads are 32%, 32.7%, they say, of revenue. So ads are 32.7%. The vast majority of that is actually YouTube ads.
Interesting.
And I'm not they're spending 82% of their ad revenue on YouTube ads, 17% on Facebook ads, and 1.2% on Google ads.
Wow. Interesting.
So anyway, so that comes out ads are between 32 and 33% of revenue. Cost of goods sold is about 43% of revenue.
Wow.
So that is, 75% of revenue, give or take a little bit, between those two. Like that's what these businesses are. They're cogs and ads. Like that's all
Right.
there is. And then all of the other expenses are, all the other expenses are 1.1% of revenue, and that includes salaries, which I'm not entirely sure how this company is able to operate with 1.1%
that's
of
incredible.
revenue coming out in all of SG&A is, they say salaries. Other, which I don't really understand. It's just like SG&A, not including marketing costs, is 1.1% of revenue.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I always love looking at businesses this way. And if you can look at your business this way, I think it's really interesting because you can look at the same number, the same metric month over month to determine, hey, how is this doing? How am I doing from a revenue perspective versus a marketing perspective? Is my marketing still 32, 33% of sales? Or is my marketing all of a sudden 40% of sales this month? And why is it 40% or why is it 20%?
Yeah.
It's also a good way to determine if you're not spending enough. Like if you're only spending 20% of your 20% of revenue on ads, you're probably not growing as fast as you could be for some reason or another. There could be a good reason. You could be like, look, I've got low gross margins. You could be like, look, I have to harness repeat customers because I'm a mature business and it's hard for me to get new customers online. Like at some point in native, by 2020, it was really difficult to advertise online because we were every single brick and mortar store and we'd hit up everyone on Facebook 400 times to go buy native deodorant. And so we couldn't get anybody else. So
Right.
Marketing all of a sudden went to under 20% of revenue, under 20% of direct to consumer revenue. But it's a good way of constantly looking at the same number over and over again and saying, has my marketing changed materially? Has my cost of goods changed materially? Has my cost of, freight changed materially month over month? And so I really encourage businesses to do this. I've been working with this guy for about 6 months and he finally produced this thing and he's like, here it is. What do you think of it? And I was like, this is great. You should do this every month so we can take a look every month and be like, how are your Facebook ads? How are your cost of goods sold?
How is he pulling the data? Is that all automated or it's all manual, finding things and putting numbers in?
I think he's on QuickBooks. I'm not 100% sure though, because he just sent me like a really nice Excel spreadsheet, but he didn't send me he wasn't like I got this out of QuickBooks. Here's access to QuickBooks or anything like that.
Got it. Yeah, I feel like a good side hustle that somebody could probably make like $20K a month with is setting up this report for $5K, and then you could even pair it with like a virtual assistant in the Philippines to just keep pulling these numbers every month and just train a virtual assistant and then just make some cash.
If you can just train a virtual assistant to do this, and I realistically think you can, you are a fucking genius though, because it is such good information and on it there's like a data overload where a bunch of businesses are like, let me show you a bunch of data, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this data?
Right, it's not actually
my average order is now 2.1 orders. What should I do? Of course I want to make it 3. You got any ideas? Does it, if I knock on the monitor, does it come out with an idea or something?
Right.
Or do I still got to come up with that? That doesn't help me. I need to get some more revenue. I know that. Give me some ideas, buddy.
Yeah.
And so this, I think, tells you, hey, look, you've changed your business in a certain way, like one way or another. And as a result, your marketing costs are low, your COGS are high, your disputes have all of a sudden gone up a bunch. Your salaries are a higher percentage of revenue than they should be. And look, there isn't a good barometer yet for this. And I think in e-commerce there should be, where it's revenue should be 25 to 34% of a marketing spend should be 24 to 34% of ad spend.
Right.
Ad spend should be 24 to 34% of revenue. That's what I really mean. I don't know where COGS lie. It really is industry specific. But I think it's a great idea to go through this type of this type of exercise every single month and be like, where am I spending money? Am I doing a good job? What costs are going up? What costs are going down?
Yeah, I even think for a lot of brands that are starting, like a lot of times I'll see decks, investment decks for like pre-seed or basically like first round. And sometimes I'll see something and my first thought is like, have you even run the numbers here? Like there's no way you're going to be able to make any money, unless you're relying on like the sixth purchase of this thing, considering how expensive it is to acquire customers and things like that. But I think a good exercise would be like, go find a business pretty close to what you're thinking of doing and actually look at the numbers and be like, okay, is this too stressful or is this realistically possible? Because there's a lot of businesses that of course, like when you're writing your own version of this document, you're like, yeah, of course people are going to buy my product every month on subscription. They're going to stay for 3 years. Why wouldn't they? And you come up with these fake realities in your head and then you go raise money off of that. And of course the VCs who invest don't know any better either. But then you get started and it's like all the stress is on you because these numbers are totally unrealistic. But it's because also no one's like told you they're unrealistic. And two, you've never gone out and found a P&L like this to go look at and get a realistic comp.
That is such a good point. And like, you can get any publicly traded company's, income statement off the internet, off of Edgar, which is what this company, the SEC runs. It's not a company. The SEC runs this website called Edgar, and you can get any publicly traded company's income statement for any quarter you want. And it's fantastic. You're going to go look at that and be like, this is what a P&L looks like. How do I understand this? Mike Tyson always says everyone has a plan until they get punched in the head. Yeah. And then they're like, fuck. And that's absolutely right. When I was running Native, people would always, even today, people are like, wow, you guys had a subscription business, right? That's why, someone subscribed and they'd be a subscriber for 5 years. I was like, absolutely not. The churn was insane.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 5 years. Are you crazy? If you have a 5-year subscription LTV, if you have someone who will stay on for 5 years, you have the greatest e-commerce business in the history of the world. I once told Stripe was like, look, we do this really good thing where we're like, we try and make it so that a credit card that gets declined as a result of an expired date, we can figure out a way to recharge it. I was like, don't worry about this. In e-commerce, everyone's subscribers churn so fast, it never gets to an expiration date. We never get to the expiration date of the credit card. We just see too much churn. But the reality is, like, we were 20% new 20% of our customers were coming in as subscribers, and we saw massive churn because everyone goes through a deodorant stick at a very different pace. And we were sort of saying, hey, buy them every 2 months. And people would be like, I need this every month, although that was very infrequent. Other people would be like, I need this every 8 months. Why are you sending me a stick every 2 months or 3 months or even 4 months? And so we saw massive amounts of churn. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, I had a plan that we were going to be a subscription-based business. The day I launched the business, I was like, this is a terrible idea. No one is buying this product. And I offered a one-time purchase, and that saved the business. I got punched in the face offering subscription only. So I think you're right. Like, you've got to create a plan, but you've got to be really nimble. But you got to understand P&Ls and understand, how are other people spending money as well.
Couldn't agree more.
That's the halfway point through the season. Next episode, I really want to talk about this law of gravity when it comes to e-commerce businesses and people not making changes fast enough, whether it comes to OpEx or salaries or marketing expenses. And the real thing that I've noticed is that people will be like, look, I don't want my revenue to decline materially. Like, I don't want to go from a $2 million a month business to a $700,000 a month business. And the reality is, if you don't cut marketing expenses, which aren't profitable for you materially right now, you won't go from a $2 million business to a $700,000 business. You'll go from a $2 million business to a business in receivership by a bankruptcy court because you didn't cut expenses fast enough.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I really want to get into that next episode. I can't wait for it.
Sounds good. All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next time to cut through the noise in CPG, retail, and e-commerce.
And if you enjoyed this episode, then why not share it with a friend? And be sure to subscribe wherever you listen so you don't miss the next one.